John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to part 2 of our 4-part look at the Commander 2017 tribal decks. Today we're going to focus on Draconic Domination. Of course, this is the Dragon tribal deck. Yesterday we looked at the Cat deck, and if you saw that video, you know what to expect here. We're going to first and foremost take a close look at the 17 brand new cards that you'll find in this deck. Then we'll quickly go through the reprints, and at the end, I'll give you my final thoughts on the deck itself. Now, quickly before we get started, if you check out the description below, you'll find a couple ways to support us. You'll find some links for some Amazon products. If you make any purchases there, a small percentage will come back to help us out. You'll also find our Patreon page linked below too. With that being said, let's get into the cards. We're going to start off with our foil commanders. Now, each of these decks come with 3 foil cards that could be used as commanders. They match the color identity of the particular deck, and these are all brand new cards. So let's start with the featured commander, the Dragon. First off, I have to say this. Super happy that they created a actual representation in card form of the Dragon. This is a character from lore that's been around for a really long time. We saw a sign of the Dragon back in Time Spiral. We're going to see it again, spoiler alert, in a few minutes. But this dragon, super sweet. They did a great job. Like all of the other feature commanders, this has Eminence. Now, Eminence is an ability that allows the card to actually do something not only on the battlefield, but also in the command zone. In this case, it makes your dragon spells 1 cheaper, at least other dragon spells. Doesn't work on itself, unfortunately. But that's actually pretty cool, because it might take a little while for this to come out, although this deck does support you finding those colors and finding your mana. You'll see that as we go through. But at least for those first few turns, it's still doing something, which is nice. And once it hits the battlefield, it's not playing around. 10/10 flyer, super aggressive. It wants you to attack with dragons to draw cards and throw more dragons into play to keep attacking with, basically. And that's what the Dragon's all about. It's all about aggression, getting your dragons out, attacking with them, getting more benefits off the attacks. And you're going to see that with the cards that are represented going forward. Now, this next option goes in a little bit different direction. This is Okagachi Vengeful Kami. And what's interesting about this, it's not as big and powerful as the Dragon, and it's also trying to get your opponents to think twice about attacking you, perhaps. Kind of a Pillow Fort style ability. Now, you're going to see a real light Pillow Fort style theme in some of the cards in the deck, but what they've done well with these particular tribal decks is they have one main option, and that's usually goes along with your feature commander, and they give you some other commanders with some light sub themes that if you chose to, you could actually enhance your deck and upgrade it to follow more strongly into those sub themes if you really wanted to. If you wanted to add some cards to this deck to go more all in on the Pillow Fort theme, then this could potentially be a good commander for you. Ramos Dragon Engine. Ramos is actually pretty sweet. Another good lore card too, by the way. But what I like about this card is it starts to play with this idea of being able to cast things for mana of every color. So by removing 5+1/+1 counters, you can only do this only once each turn, but you do get 2 of each color mana, which there's other cards that exploit that. Again, it's a light sub-theme out of the package, but you could add to that, and you'll see that as we go through. Now, I also got to wonder, if I got a 9/9 flyer, do I even need to cast anything else? Sometimes you will, obviously, especially in Commander, but there's going to be times where that might just be good enough to just do serious damage, especially if this is your commander. So, yeah, the card seems super sweet, and this is one that has definitely captured a lot of players' imaginations. Keep in mind, too, it is a legal commander in a 5-color deck, because even though it's colorless, it does have the 5 mana symbols in the rules text, which means it shares color identity for all 5. All right, let's look at the new creatures you'll get aside from those. You're going to get Boneyard Scourge. I like this card a lot, actually. It's just super persistent. It's easy to bring it back continuously from the graveyard. Unless your opponent can exile it and get rid of it permanently, it's going to be a nuisance. It's not super huge. It doesn't have haste, so it's not as fast as some of these other cards that keep reoccurring from the graveyard we've seen in the past. However, typically those cards can't block, so this one can block, which is nice if you want to be more defensive. But just generally, I think this is a really cool inclusion. Scalelord Reckoner. Well, here's another one of those cards that kind of says, hey, keep your hands off my stuff. So it's kind of going along more with the defensive style, but again, it's a nice utility card for that. Taigam Ojitai Master. This card's cool because that first section is what really piques my interest. Instant, sorcery, and dragon spells you control can't be countered. So obviously for this deck, dragons are the main priority, so that's great. But outside of this deck, I could see this card getting some competitive commander play, maybe in like Grand Arbiter style decks because of the instant and sorcery clause there. So that's pretty interesting. The second ability itself is okay. Like, I like rebounding my spells, and if I can work that out, wonderful. There's going to be times where you can't get a profitable attack, but you could still attack into something, let this die, and still get the rebound. I mean, if you needed to, it's an option. But overall, like I said, I'm more interested in that first clause. Territorial Hellkite. This one's interesting. Here's the deal with this card. It's fun out of the box. If you're going to sit down and play with your friends and just have a good time, you're just buying these at your local LGS or something and taking them home to play with, this is a fine card. But this is also a very high variance card. It's fast, I'll give it that, 6/5 flying haste, but you don't really have total control over where it's going, who it's attacking, and all that stuff. So I can't really recommend it in a more competitive deck, but again, it's very fun. Wasatori Nakora Queen. Okay, Cat Dragon. I don't think I need to say anything else. This card's super sweet. It's a Cat Dragon that makes more Cat Dragon. 3/3 flying Cat Dragon tokens. And there you go. I don't know what else to say. Flying Trample on top of it all. Just for 5 mana, 3 on color, which is not bad for everything you're getting here. So very powerful card, and even if you don't play this card in this particular dragon build, I could see this card seeing tons of commander play in a lot of different builds. Alright, let's look at some new sorceries. We have Fortunate Few. This one's another high variance card. Fun out of the box, don't get me wrong. Like, if you're going to have a good time and have fun with your friends at the kitchen table, it's a cool card. But again, it's high variance. I mean, it could hurt you more than it hurts other people sometimes. There's not always going to be a great time to play it when you're comfortable. So, that kind of is what it is. It's definitely one of those cards you could upgrade for something more consistent. Fractured Identity. This one's cool because what I really want to do with this is cast something that has a big detriment to it and then get rid of it with this and give a copy to all my friends at the table. Now, yes, you could play this maybe the more traditional way, exile a target non-land permanent from someone else, and then you get a copy and everyone else gets a copy, and that's maybe fine some of the time, but what you really want to do with this is mess with people. Now, out of the box, there's not opportunity for that too much here, but maybe an upgrade or something. My thought is Phage. I want to play Phage and then give everyone else a Phage and pack up my cards and go home. But that's super spiky, granted, and probably not a whole lot of fun. So let me know in the comments below your thoughts, because there's probably some more fun interactions you could do with this card and give people stuff that's maybe more annoying but doesn't just end the game. I don't know. But it seems like it could be super sweet. All right, let's look at some new enchantments. We looked at this one yesterday in the cat deck, so I won't go into the gory details here. I talked about it quite a bit yesterday, but I will say just briefly, I love this whole cycle. Interactive curses in a multiplayer game, super sweet way to go with this. You can cast these on an opponent or on yourself, and you're going to find different benefits in different situations. It's a pretty high, I think, skill-intensive card, actually, trying to use it the right way. And the whole cycle suite, this one in particular, every time the person that's enchanted with this is attacked, the person attacking and yourself, if it's not you, gets a benefit. And for this particular version, it's players untap all non-land permanents he or she controls. All right, here's the red version, Curse of Opulence. This time, the benefit is you're getting a gold token, which can be sacrificed to 4 mana of any color, which is good for this dragon deck, obviously. Curse of Verbosity. This one may be my favorite of them all, just because I like drawing cards, and that is the benefit you get from this one. Kindred Discovery. Another nice card draw engine, actually. 5 casting costs, very affordable. It could lead to a lot of card draw for a tribal deck. Alright, let's talk about some new artifacts. You're going to get Heralds Horn. We talked about this one yesterday, so again, I won't go into all the detail, but I will say this. I'd be happy to run this in any tribal commander deck any day of the week, actually. Feels pretty good for 3 mana. And Mirror of the Forebears. This one's interesting because it feels a little bit like Mirage Mirror, but Mirage Mirror felt a little better, although it was a little more expensive. So I guess it's give or take. I mean, you could play both in a deck if you wanted to, and this is going to be just fine for you in a tribal deck. Alright, let's look at the new land, and this is included in all 4 decks. We talked about it yesterday, but this is Path of Ancestry real quick. Basically a command tower that comes into play tapped. That's pretty sweet. And on top of that, to kind of make up for the loss of momentum when it comes into play, you'll get to scry periodically throughout the game, and that's actually pretty good. All right, let's look at the reprints. And let's start off with the creatures you're going to be getting here. You're going to see a whole bunch of dragons, as you can imagine. Matarka World Render, very aggressive dragon to start off. And that's the theme out of the box here. Like I said, there's some sub-themes going on with Pillow Fort and maybe some 5-color madness, but really the key marker of this deck out of the box is aggro. Like, it wants you to play these big creatures and attack with them and just be relentless. You're going to see that with the cards that are included. Bladewing the Risen. Now, this has been reprinted not too long ago. Not a really expensive card, but it messes with reanimation now. This is another real light theme that you find in the deck. There's a couple cards that exploit this. And with dragon decks, that can be very powerful. And you're going to see a card that's a reprint, which I've already kind of teased, that plays really well with this in a few minutes. Broodmate Dragon, nothing to write home about, but it's super economical. I mean, 2 4/4 flyers for 6 helps you populate that tribe theme. Croesus the Purger. You're going to see a lot of these cards that if you can do the damage and pay the price, you get a benefit out of it. So again, they're really encouraging you to go all in and attack. Deathbringer Regent. This is one of the board sweeps. The board sweeps in this particular deck come in maybe untraditional ways. They're basically attached to creatures. This is one of them. Dragonlord Servant, easy way to bring the cost of your spells down a little bit. Dragon Speaker Shaman, same thing. Jamoka the Eternal, another good dragon that helps you bolster out some of the power and toughness of your smaller things as you go on. It's a little slow, but it's just fine for 5. Hellkite Charger. I like this one a little bit too because not only does it work for being more aggressive, it comes in with haste, it creates a second combat phase. You could probably finish off an opponent just with this thing alone coming into the battlefield. But also, if you want to be a little more aggressive but still defend yourself, you can attack with this thing, then you get to untap what you attacked with, go to that second combat phase. You don't have to attack, so that leads to an opportunity to still attack but hold up your defenses. Intet the Dreamer, another one of these legendary dragons that is going to give you benefit for getting damage across and paying the price. Kolgan the Storm's Fury. I like Dash, actually. Dash is super sweet, and if you never played with it from the Khans of Tarkir block, give it a chance because it does avoid things like board sweeps and sorcery speed removal. It can be really sweet. Niv Mizzet Draco Genius. Nice reprint here. Niv is great because Niv is all about drawing more cards, great mana sink. Ojutai Soul of Winter. Again, another card that's going to allow you to be on the offensive, tap down your opponent's defenses. Again, nothing to write home about here, but also it has vigilance, so it does work well for the defensive side of things too. Orator of Ojutai. This one's interesting. Like, obviously it interacts with dragons. It's a cheap way to kind of gum up the air and just gum up the game while you're trying to cast your stuff, but it feels a little out of place here where everything else is just hyper aggressive and trying to get you to ramp into what you need, and then this is kind of here, so I don't know. Feels like you could probably switch this out for something else in this deck, but I kind of get, at least in theory, what it's supposed to do here. Ryusai the Falling Star. And this card is one of the Kamigawa cycles of dragons. We saw these all in the first Modern Masters as well. This is a pretty decent one too because, again, this kind of works as a quasi-board sweep when it dies, dealing 5 damage to each creature without flying. Savage Ventmaw. This is kind of a card that you think about, like, I want to cast something for 6, but I also want to get a free 4/4 flyer out of it. That's basically what this card does. Sign of the Ur-Dragon. Now, this card has been traditionally one of the key commanders for Dragon Tribal for many, many years. Originally printed in Time Spiral. I've been teasing this card now a couple times. But it's awesome, especially, again, if you want to go a little bit deeper in the reanimation strategy. Being able to tutor for a dragon, you dump it in your graveyard. This becomes a copy of it till end of turn. So you get those effects from these big dragons. You can still attack in with them and do some crazy things. But at the same time, if you can later reanimate them, that gets insane. So, yeah, this card's pretty sweet. Costs 1 of each color. This actually could be your commander if you chose to, and maybe if you tailored the deck a little bit with some upgrades, so it still could be a good choice if you want to go a little old school. Scourge of Velkas. This is fine. It interacts with dragons, obviously. It's never been reprinted before, so it's always nice to see that. It's not a cheap card either. These run like $3, $4, so it's kind of a nice inclusion. It's got fire breathing as well. Silmagar the Drifting Death. There's a hexproofer that also brings the defenses down a little bit on your defender. Spellbound Dragon. Another card that's all about being aggressive. You get to loot, but you also get the boost to the power when you throw the card away, which is kind of sweet too. Steel Hellkite. This is one of the options that you have for getting rid of a non-land permanent. Now, again, you do have to get damage across for it to happen, but once you do, it lets you deal with some things that this deck might have a harder time dealing with. Sunscorched Regent, great card for multiplayer. Like, if you have a lot of people sitting at a table and they're going to be casting spells, this will get bigger. It's going to gain you a little bit of life. If your opponents don't deal with it fast, it could get out of hand. Teneb the Harvester. Here's another one of these. And this one, again, plays a little bit into graveyard mechanics. But notice, it says if you do, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield. Doesn't even have to be your graveyard. So I always like that kind of versatility. Tyrant's Familiar. Another card that has never seen a reprint before. Now, Lieutenant was a mechanic we saw in a previous Commander set, and I always liked it. I thought this was a really sweet idea, and I wanted to see more of it. So it's kind of nice that we're getting the reprint here. This is very powerful if your Commander's in play. Utvara Hellkite. This was originally from Return to Ravnica, and it wasn't cheap. It was a $6-7 card, actually. A lot of Commander players would play with this, and you can see here it rewards you for going all in and attacking with your dragons. This is a very powerful card once it hits the battlefield. Alright, let's look at some sorceries. Crux of Fate from Fate Reforged. Great inclusion here. Totally makes sense. Now here's a sweep spell that isn't attached to a creature. That's kind of nice. And also too, it's one-sided most of the time for you. Destroy all non-dragon creatures. Very sweet. I mean, you have the option to destroy all dragons if you need to, but most of the time you'll opt for that second option. Cultivate. Great way to fix your colors and ramp a little bit. Earthquake. Now this is the second spell we've seen that impacts creatures on the ground but not in the air. I kind of wish that they included either Hurricane maybe, or at least one of those combo cards that they've made in the past that can be Earthquake or Hurricane or what have you. Just because I get it, like this is still good to deal with some creatures on the ground, maybe small utility creatures or other tribes that are mostly on the ground, and that will be good playing these out of the box, of course. But I don't know, I would have liked a way to clear the sky a little more consistently to help me get my dragons across, and especially those dragons that have abilities when they hit for combat damage. Farseek, another way to find what you need color-wise. Kodoma's Reach, same story here. Painful Truths, you might be able to upgrade this for maybe a more consistent card draw spell, but it's just fine out of the box. Rain of Thorns, another card that lets you deal with things that this deck might have a hard time dealing with, namely artifact, enchantment, or lands, and most of the time you're going to be able to find all three of those as a target, so the 6 doesn't feel like too bad of a casting cost. Alright, let's look at enchantments. Crucible of Fire, great way to buff your dragons. Dragon Tempest, I like this card a lot, mostly for the first part of it. The giving your dragons haste is super sweet just for 2 mana to put this out. Elemental Bond, here's a way to draw some cards. Basically a card draw engine, can be real good for you. Frontier Siege, you're going to see a few of these sieges, and I actually like the inclusion here. This does a couple things for you. This one, if you are behind, it does ramp you a little bit. But more importantly, probably what you really want to do with this is that dragon option. Whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, you get to fight a creature you don't control. That can be real good. Monastery Siege. Again, that cons version helps you maybe find what you need with that extra loot every turn. The dragon version, though, is really where you want to go. Spells your opponents cast that target you or a permanent you control cost 2 more to cast. So it plays into that Pillow Fort style sub-theme a little bit anyway. Palace Siege. This one may be the least impressive of the 3. Again, if you can go all in on Pillow Fort and your defenses are high, that dragon option is not bad for you. And the cons option's okay. It helps you recur some stuff. I mean, they don't go directly in the battlefield. You have to recast them, but I don't think this deck is going to have too much trouble recasting things. Let's look at artifacts. You're going to find a lot of color fixing here. Armillary Spear completely makes sense to fix your colors. Commander's Spear, another great way to fix your colors, and later can be replaced if you don't need it anymore. Darksteel Ingot, fantastic mana rock. Dreamstone Hedron. This one's interesting. It does let you ramp a little bit for colorless. I don't know if you'll always need that. You might need the color requirements more so in this deck, but it also can be traded in for some card draw. Fist of Suns. I like this inclusion a lot. This is the first time that we've seen it reprinted. This card always reminded me a little bit of the Infinity Gauntlet. So there you go with the art and everything. But anyway, you may pay one of each color mana instead of paying the regular cost for the spell. So if you wanted to really exploit this more so, you could probably put some big haymaker spells in here and then try to cast them for just the 5 mana, one for each color. And you might be able to get away with it in this deck, actually. Lightning Greaves, fantastic staple for Commander. Nihil's Spellbomb. Yeah, if you need to deal with graveyards, although it's a little counterintuitive out of the box considering that you do have cards that interact with, or at least one card that interacts with other people's graveyards. So, I mean, if you need it, it's there, I guess. Soul Ring, great inclusion here. We talked about it a lot yesterday, so I don't want to spend too much time, but awesome to see this in these products. Wayfarer's Bauble, another way to help you find the color you need. All right, let's look at the lands again. You're going to see a ton of color fixing here. And they actually give you a good variety. Even though they're not going all out with expensive lands, they made some good choices here. You're going to see a lot of the tricolor lands like Arcane Sanctum. You get a command tower, great staple to have. Crucible of the Spirit Dragon, basically a mana battery for dragons and dragon abilities. Crumbling Necropolis. Frontier Bivouac. Haven of the Spirit Dragon. This is actually kind of sweet because not only does it fix your color for dragons, but also if you wanted to upgrade with Ugin, this interacts well with Ugin as well. Jungle Shrine. Mystic Monastery. Nomad Outpost. Opulent Palace. Sandstep Citadel. Savage Lands, you see the theme here. Seaside Citadel. And you're going to get one of each of the Vivid lands. Vivid, Crag, Creek, Grove, Marsh, and Meadow. Great inclusions, actually. And with these cards, I feel like it's going to be very easy, for the most part, to cast these really mana-intensive, color-intensive spells. I think they did a really good job here. Again, of course, you could upgrade this mana base. You can for all these decks. But I feel like they did a pretty good job considering with the price range they're trying to work with here. Alright, as far as basic lands go, I mentioned this in yesterday's video, but they did bring back all of the basic lands, the art anyway, from the previous year. So we get the Rebecca Guay lands, we get the Mark Poole lands, and the Kev Walker lands. And they all do still look beautiful, even a year later. So you're going to get 3 forests, 3 islands, 6 mountains, 3 plains, and 3 swamps. Just to give you my final thoughts on the deck, I think it's pretty sweet. Now, it's funny with these tribal decks when you review them. Basically, if you like dragons, buy this deck. I mean, that's the overarching headline, quite honestly, right? These are tribal decks. Play the tribe that you love. You're going to have more fun with it. If you love dragons, play dragons. If you love cats, play the one we looked at yesterday, right? But when it comes to this deck, it does a good job, I think, of the color fixing aspect that you really need to pull off here. And also, too, just the theme of digging in and fighting with these dragons, I think could be a lot of fun. I also like the mini sub-themes they've worked in here, Pillow Fort being one of them, Reanimation being another one, and then the 5 Color Matters theme also being another one. I mean, think about what you could do with some upgrades here, things like Door to Nothingness, or perhaps even Progenitus for the 5 color theme, right? Or you could go with a lot more stricter reanimation stuff to maybe mill yourself even and then reanimate those dragons out of the graveyard quickly. You could go definitely with a lot more enchantments that can protect you if you want to go more into Pillow Fort. So there's a lot of routes you could go that they've established in here, at least with some subtle hints for some upgrades if you chose to. And that's what I really like about these products this year in general. They did a good job at, especially for new players, giving them little hints at different directions you could go with your upgrades. And yes, the main deck itself does feel like it is tailored to that suggested commander that you're going to see at the front of the product. But at the same time, the options are there, the clues are there, they gave you some hints, and I think that's actually pretty sweet. In this deck, no exception. So I actually like this a lot. Happy to try it out, hopefully in a couple weeks. But hey, we're going to be back tomorrow. We got more to talk about. Tomorrow is going to be vampires, and the following day we'll be looking at the wizards. We'll wrap things up there. So until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.